Hi, my name is Audrey Kalman, and I'm thrilled to be here at the request of the San Mateo County Library System to do a reading. I will be reading a story from Fault Zone Uplift, which is part of an anthology series produced by the SF Peninsula Branch of the California Writers Club. I'll be reading a story called Pearls. The house, early in the morning, is peaceful. Frank sleeps without snoring, like a baffled bear under the clutch of blankets. Ingrid sits at the kitchen table and counts her irritations. As usual, she starts counting at 1, since she never knows how many she will list. 1. The psoriasis that has flaked her elbows since late adolescence. It's her body's response to a kind of self-irritation, which erupts in great mottled blooms of red and white skin, calling out to her, "Scratch me, scratch me." 2. The chip in her favorite mug. Frank whacked the mug against the granite, trying to be helpful by loading the dishwasher. Except his assistance felt not like a gesture of loving kindness, but like an accusation. He might as well have said, "I'm always the one cleaning up." She would have answered, "And I always cook." If he thinks she should clean up too, well, that's his problem. Now, though, his carelessness has become her problem, in the form of a chip in the glaze, the approximate size and shape of an incisor. 3. The new interior irritation that came upon her suddenly a few months back. It began with the sensation of being unable to swallow a mouthful of food, and progressed to the occasional feeling that one of the large fish oil supplements her doctor recommended she take had lodged itself sideways in her throat. The irritation progressed to what the doctor almost gleefully labeled reflux, which seems absurd because reflux has always been Frank's affliction, not hers. Ingrid turns her gaze outward to the maple leaves trembling in the morning breeze. A crow struts across the lawn, then stops at the curb to peck at an invisible treasure. Crows are quite intelligent, she's heard. Also, they mate for life, and the males cheat. What does that say about their intelligence? This crow is one of a group living in her neighborhood. They make good candidates for irritation number 4. They settle in the tree outside her bedroom window and call to each other at ungodly hours, their rasping voices penetrating Ingrid's sleep. No wonder they were labeled a murder of crows. She complained to Frank, who shrugged and handed her a pair of earplugs. Across the sloping street, her neighbor's house offers irritation number 5. It needs a paint job. Ingrid can see the patches in the tan paint, revealing the ghastly eggshell blue of the previous coat. The deterioration is worst around the frame of the picture window directly facing Ingrid's house, a chafing with a result not unlike the peeling of Ingrid's skin around the elbows. If she had more energy, she would write a letter to the city. Surely there's an ordinance she could cite, a prohibition against letting a house become an eyesore, an irritation. The tea has grown lukewarm. Ingrid lifts the mug with both hands and sips, avoiding the tooth-shaped chip. On the counter next to the sink is the mug Frank bought last week as a replacement. A bowl-like vessel with a handle so tiny she can barely fit 2 fingers through. One of those inspirational sayings is printed down the side. Maintain an attitude of gratitude. Who thinks these things up? She clinks her wedding ring against the side of her familiar, blemished mug. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She begins counting down. This time, she names not her irritations, but her blessings. 5. The house across the street once contained the woman who became her best friend in the world. 30 years ago, as a young mother, trying to maneuver a spoonful of baby food into the protesting O of her squalling son's mouth, Ingrid looked up from this very kitchen table and saw Karen, whom she did not yet know was Karen, struggling down the steps with a baby of her own in one arm and a toddler attached to the other. Though the house was a good 20 yards away, Ingrid swore she could see the irritation radiating from the woman. Ingrid left her son in his chair, strapped in, of course, flung open the front door, trotted to the sidewalk, and called, "Do you need a hand?" To which Karen replied, "Yes, please. May I have 2?" Thus began their almost daily trips across the street. Later, there were walks down the hill to the elementary school, glasses of wine on Friday afternoons, a celebratory bottle of champagne when their firstborns went off to college, and 2 bottles when their secondborns did. And then the treks Ingrid made during the final year, with casserole, soups, juices, anything at all that Karen might be able to keep down after the chemo. And the last trek for the reception after the funeral. Blessing 4, the crows. They're quite attractive, actually, with their oily blue-black feathers, a color any lady with a bit of gray would kill to have her hairdresser achieve. They deserve to live in the world as much as she does. Maybe she could learn a thing or two from the way they flock together, their dedication to one another, their in-the-moment focus on whatever they're doing, collecting bits of things, scraping roadkill off the pavement with their beaks. She looks out the window again, but the lawn is empty. 3. Ingrid places her hand on the hollow beneath her breastbone, the taut skin such a vulnerable covering for what's inside. Her viscera have betrayed her, twisting into knots, spewing excessive and unnecessary fluids. How could she possibly count such a thing as a blessing? Yet this new affliction has led to her losing a few pounds, which she's meant to do for years and never got around to, but which seems easy now because almost any food she ingests becomes an irritation. And she's cut back on the wine, which has shut Frank up with his statistics about alcoholism among older women. Frank would be pleased to hear that he has assumed the number 2 place in her blessing list. How did she arrive at Frank when she started with the chipped cup? 35 years together is a long time. Long enough so each partner's rough edges ought to be smoothed away. Instead, there's something oysterish about the 2 of them. Frank is a grain of sand that causes Ingrid to accrete layer upon layer of resentment. She can be grateful to the cup for serving as Frank's proxy. The crow reappears airborne and swoops to perch on an impossibly tiny branch, a twig really, atop the neighbor's birch tree. It gazes down upon her with its glittering eye. Ingrid lifts her arms from the table and scratches her elbows. The ever-present psoriasis remains irritation number 1. Like the regurgitated acid, it reminds her of the many ways her body can malfunction. In the inventory of human ills, these are both minor. Psoriasis never killed anyone, and acid takes years to erode the esophagus and invite cancer to set up residence. Something else will kill her before then. She runs a finger over the pebbly skin of her left elbow. So much a part of her identity. She wasn't always grateful for this affliction. The first time Frank saw her naked, all those years ago, she had wanted desperately to remain clothed. He peeled her long-sleeved shirt up gently as if undressing a child. The collar stuck on her chin, so she stood with her head covered for a moment as Frank worked the fabric free. He kissed her palm, her wrist, her forearm. She held her breath when he arrived at the crook of her elbow, but he never faltered, kissing the smooth skin of the inside fold, and then, without a blink, without hesitation, the ugly red scales of the exterior. Ingrid finishes the last cold sip of tea. She stands for a moment at the sink. Then she lowers the chipped mug into the trash and unfurls a fresh tea bag into Frank's new mug. Outside the window, the crow lifts off from the branch, tearing the air with its raw cry.